Hey, everybody, happy Wednesday. Erica here from In the Company of Cards. Welcome if you're new. If you've been here before, welcome back. So, what are we going to look at today? Again, a bunch of issues kind of all over the place, but most of them political in nature today. So, the first is that Comey was arraigned today, and the prosecution, led by that new lawyer who looks like a typical felon favorite, that look that he likes for women, um, asked for an extension. She wants the trial delayed as long as possible because she says it's complex. That's a very unusual stance, you should know, for the prosecutor to take. By the time a court, a case is ready to be arraigned, the prosecution generally has pretty clear sense or belief that they can win, that they have a case to bring. So it was very unusual for her to say, can we put it off as long as possible? Basically, is what she said. Now, the trial is scheduled to start in the first week in January of 2026. We know that the case is bogus and revenge based, and that the felon ordered Bondi to come up with something to prosecute Comey with. So I just want to ask once again whether the case will actually, in the end, go to trial, because I have my doubts as to whether it would even go to trial. So I'm going to use, uh, hmm, let's let's use birds because birds would be like the jury, all of the court officers and the various, um, you know, people involved. So we'll use birds with an eye towards the birds representing that something like January 5th, something like that, start of the Comey case. And I just want to know what will happen with this case. Will it proceed? The judge apparently thinks that it will go 2 or 3 days long. So, again, anybody who has two eyes and half an ear knows that they don't have a case, but let's see, does it fall apart before then, before January? So we're going to use the birds, and that will stand for a jury trial. Popped right up. That means it's not in the middle. It's going to be the second card. So this is the card that is important. Okay, so we have the heart, we have the jury trial. The tree is the card that's in the middle, the child, and the woman. Uh, I'm going to say that what I find most interesting is the card that's in the middle. So, tree is the card for health. I do think that the felon's health is falling apart even as we speak. I don't think that he'll be here in January, but you never know. I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor, just reading cards. But this is also a slow card. So it speaks to the fact that Halligan, who is his, Fox host looking um, prosecutor, wants to slow walk the case because that's what she said. That's what she asked for. She is a real neophyte. She's never prosecuted a case like this. So this is the card for the neophyte, the tyro, the beginner. And this would speak to the same energy. She's a young woman and really has not made her bones yet. He's scraping the bottom of the barrel because he's run through how many lawyers so far. So her ineptitude shows in these two cards, hate to say it. Um, Interesting that the first card is the heart. She probably loves him and loves the fact that he has given her this opportunity um, to make her bones. but she really doesn't know what she's doing. Now, that said, the tree implies that the case will be slow walked. I mean, you could argue that it kind of already has been slow walked. Well, that's not really true because we're in October. January, I realize, is just, a few months away. So let's pull some more cards and see what we get. I do think it's interesting that we've got that slow walk card here, but this also could stand for his health. I'm not sure which. And then we've got these two cards in the end, the child and the woman, that speak to Prosecutor Halligan's um, inexperience, we'll just say. Okay, so let's pull some more cards. So I'm going to pull um, on the tree. Okay, so I pulled on the tree, and that's the slowing down of things. Again, they're not slowing it down that much if it's in January. We have the scales, the ring, and the ship. So she wants to slow it down, but justice dictates that the court um, keep its contract, we'll call it, with the public and with the law to move things along. Let's get this thing moved along. So she won't get what she wants by wanting, because what will happen is this is not the first motion that she'll make to slow things down. As we get closer to that date, watch her try that again. Um, but the judge will say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We made this commitment. It's only fair to the defendant and to the people that this case proceed apace. So we're not going to slow it down. Here is this, card for the beginner, the inept, um, you know, unprepared, unseasoned prosecutor. Clarifiers are the scythe, the whip, and the letter. The scythe and the whip look like really tough cards to me. This is the letter of the law. The law. I don't know that she necessarily knows the law. She's shown that in a couple of instances already with preliminary motions, but here's her. And then we have the scythe. I mean, I think she will be sharply taken to task by the judge, who will have zero patience for her ineptitude. So she will feel like she's been, uh, you know, spoken to cuttingly, we'll say, and sort of, I think she'll feel beaten up, but beaten up because she took a job she has no business taking. No other prosecutor in that office would agree to take this case. In fact, people got fired for refusing to take the case. So she's going to get beat up, and she should be, because she doesn't really know the law. She's just doing the felon's bidding. Okay, here she is again. And the clarifiers are the mountain, the tower, and the fox. So she will be advised by more seasoned lawyers for how to stall, 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 stall. Uh, this is the government, but I think it's like the DOJ, which is Trump's government also. Shouldn't be, but it is. And then we have the Fox. So she will be advised by other lawyers who have more experience than she does, but they also have these ulterior motives, which are the main ulterior motive is to make the felon happy. Again, I don't know that the felon is going to be around for January, and I think the case would fall apart if he were not around. So there's always that possibility. But I think she's gonna feel rode hard and put up wet by the time this thing is over. She will have ruined her. reputation. Um, which I mean, that's her problem. I don't really care about that, so I'm not going to look at that. But I think that is that will be the what the plan, the strategy. That's what I'm trying to say. That will be the strategy to slow walk everything, because that's what he does. This judge, again, will not tolerate it, but she will have other lawyers who will find sort of, you know, minutia, hidden in the statutes that will allow some delay. Uh, but let's look and see how Comey will fare. So we're going to use the card for the older man, and that will stand for Comey. And so, whether the trial goes on, whether it doesn't go on, how will he fare? Okay. And of course, he'll have the best legal minds in the country helping him, not to mention, he himself certainly knows the law. So she's up against it. I think she, in the end, will feel like the one who's punished, not Comey. Okay, so this is Comey. I mean, even though, again, he has the best legal minds who are probably representing him for free, he himself has a good legal mind, obviously. This is still an ordeal. It takes up your time, it takes up your energy. Um, so we have Crossroads, Clouds. This is Comey, Cross, and Scythe. Don't love these for him. But I hold on. So, Crossroads, it looks like, here's the trial going along, going along, going along, and then suddenly, so I feel like it could be cut short. The trial could be cut short or not happen. That's what I think this is. And then I can mirror the second card with the fourth card. So here's Clouds and here's Cross. I don't know. I know this is Comey in the middle, but I just feel like the felon's health does go downhill. He starts to sound more and more addled and confused and not with the program. Um, I think the case falls apart, is what I think, midstream. So, we'll know soon, right? But that's what I think. I think the case will fall apart midstream. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about Stephen Miller. So, everybody by now has either heard or seen what happened. So he was on CNN and being interviewed, and it was just him, outside on the lawn or whatever, probably the White House lawn, and then a reporter, but they were remote from each other. And so Stephen Miller started to say a sentence. Well, and he essentially said the sentence. He said, "The president has plenary power." So of course everybody's racing to Google what does plenary power mean? Plenary power means absolute power. Xi in China has plenary power. Putin in Russia has plenary power. Hitler in Nazi Germany had plenary power. Okay. The felon does not have plenary power. I'll give you an example. So you know how he was asked about what he was going to do with Ghislaine Maxwell, whether he was going to pardon her or not. And he said, well, I don't know. I have to talk to the DOJ. No, actually, he does not have to talk to the DOJ. Why do I say that? Because when it comes to issuing presidential pardons, clemency. So somebody gets out of jail or has their you know, their penalty or their sentence commuted or revoked or whatever. He has the power to do that. He doesn't have to ask permission of anybody to do that. So that's an example of plenary power. But he is prescribed in what powers he has that are plenary. That is one of the, that is one of the few ways that he has plenary power. But Stephen Miller said, well, he has plenary power. He can do whatever he wants. So what happened was Stephen Miller said that sentence, and then there was dead silence. He didn't finish his sentence. He just said the president has plenary power, and then he stopped. I mean, and time's passing, right? And so the reporter said, Stephen, Stephen, are you there? And Stephen's there, but he's acting like he doesn't hear because he wants the reporter to think that there is some sort of technical um, glitch. There was not a technical glitch. What happened was uh, he probably got something in his earpiece. That's what I think. Or he realized all by himself that what he said was a stupid thing. Now, why is it a stupid thing for him to say the president has plenary power? I mean, first of all, we know that he's acting like he has plenary power, is he not? I mean, that's not news to anybody, right? So, what's the issue here? Well, the issue is if he has plenary power and he's saying things like, uh, the shutdown needs to stop so federal workers can be paid. Well, if he has plenary powers, he can ensure that the federal workers get paid. If he has plenary powers, he can do a lot of things. He doesn't have plenary power. But Stephen Miller thinks that if he says that he does, it's like watch the watch. We'll believe it. But, there are people out there who do believe that he has plenary power. He can do whatever he wants. So then why are they still suffering? Why why are they not being paid? Right? You see what I mean? So Stephen Miller kind of stepped in it, basically, is what happened. Uh, so but that's just my opinion. Let's ask the cards. Was there a technical glitch at CNN that caused Stephen Miller to not be able to hear the reporter? Let's ask that question. Was there some sort of technical glitch? And I'm going to use the star because that's technical and, interweb stuff like that. So let's use the star. Was there a problem with the audio, for lack of a better word? Was there a problem with that? So let's look for the star, and that will stand for any technical issues that have been happening. So we have clover, crossroads, star, young woman, and scale. I'm going to say there was not a technical glitch. However, that's what Stephen Miller wanted you to think. Lucky for him, the interview was remote, right? If the two guys had been like in the same room together and that had happened, I mean, he would have looked like Mitch McConnell looked like. Remember that time when he was standing in front of the cameras and then all of a sudden, remember that? That's what it would have looked like. It did look like that with Stephen Miller, but because of the remote nature of the conversation, meaning that Stephen Miller was in one place and the reporter was, at his headquarters or wherever, that was a lucky thing for Miller because he could pretend that it was a glitch because he realized quick, I said what I said. Oh, I shouldn't have said what I said. It's like a change of direction, right? Now, CNN backed him up and said, yeah, it was a technical glitch. And they took that portion of the interview down. This is what you call agreeing in advance. So, CNN, in my opinion, and entertainment purposes only, is not to be trusted as a news source. I mean, and I will just add to that, whoever heard of doing an interview with the president via text, which is what Jake Tapper did? You don't know who's typing those answers. So as far as I'm concerned, CNN is not a trustworthy source of information. So I think la 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 la, Stephen Miller's talking about we can do whatever we want. And then, oh, wait, if we can do whatever we want, why aren't these people being paid? So he switched up really quick. And the fact that it was remote was a lucky accident so that he could blame it on a technical glitch. Again, if this had been in person, and he'd had suddenly gone deer in headlights, he would have looked like he was as crazy as he actually is. So he, in that moment, he was disempowered. And he realized that, legally, he had to do some fast talking legally. So that's what that was about. Interesting. So either somebody said something in his earpiece or he realized, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I shouldn't say that the president has plenary powers in the middle of a shutdown. Did he just not order people to, you know, plenary powers? You can't have a shutdown. I mean, plenary powers. He doesn't have plenary powers. He only has plenary powers under certain circumstances. And the one that I could think of, as I said, is whether or not he can commute a sentence, as in Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, interesting. Okay, well, a couple more. So the felon, you know, has, well, again, and if he has plenary powers, how come it hasn't happened? He has ordered the arrest of the mayor of Chicago, his last name is Johnson, and the governor of Illinois, uh, Pritzker. He's ordered their arrest. Will they be arrested? So let's look and see. Uh, hmm, I think I'm going to use the tower for like, you know, when you're arrested, I guess they take you to the station. So let's use that for like jail. I mean, obviously they wouldn't spend any time in jail, but for a minute they would be. If they got arrested, they would be taken to jail, right? So we're going to use the tower. Will Pritzker and Johnson be arrested? Because now we've got the National Guard there, um, and ICE and whatever else. Uh, and I want to say a word on that. So, I mentioned the photograph of the little kid zip tied, and somebody uh, said to me, well, that photo was AI. And I think it probably was AI generated. I don't care if it was AI or it wasn't AI, because in fact, children were rousted out of their homes in the middle of the night from their beds, and they were, in fact, zip tied together. Maybe the little kids didn't have their hands zip tied together, but they were zip tied to each other. So don't come here and split hairs with me. It's abuse. Okay. All right. So will Mayor Johnson or Governor Pritzker be arrested in the next days as per the orders of the felon? Okay, and we're going to use the tower for, the whole arrest process. Power's deep in the deck, but that doesn't matter. Just up. As soon as I always say that, the card pops up. Okay, so this will stand for the arrest of Governor Pritzker or Mayor Johnson. Well, we have the dog, we have the lily, we have the tower that stands for arrest, we have the moon, and we have the key. And I drew some clarifiers. So this, of course, is lawyers, right? Um, and I can mirror lawyers, the dog lawyers with the key. So, the lawyers are always operative in these kinds of situations. Now, these cards, Lily and Moon, seem pretty peaceful to me. So they preclude an arrest. I do not think there will be an arrest of these two. But I did pull cards, clarifiers on our tower, which is the arrest, a possible arrest, and we have the tree, the scythe, and the young woman. I mean, I think that the point of the arrest would be to make them look disempowered. These two Illinois officials make them look disempowered. Um, I think that if that were to happen, it would be another blow to the health of our democracy. Like, remember George Washington cut down the cherry tree? It would be a blow, a cut to the longevity of our democracy if that were to happen. We've got the moon as the fourth card. We have clover, child, and coffin. I think that it would help seal the felon's fate. This is reputation, and his reputation would be buried. He would be buried. Uh, and that would happen quick, fast, and in a hurry. Uh, he would look like the rube that he is, arrest everybody, just you know, when in doubt, arrest people. He's very ham-fisted and broad-brushed, and it's not a good look. So I think it would go a long way towards harming him further, his reputation in the eyes of the people who are still not all the way awake. So then we have the key and the clarifiers are the ship, the letter, and the woman. Hmm. I don't know. This always makes me think of Pam Bondi. She could facilitate their arrest. She could have I don't know, the federal agencies or something arrest them. But you know what? Go ahead, because it will just hasten the revolution. Speaking of revolution, I wanted to talk about that for a second. There has been talk on the internet, you've probably seen it, about a purple revolution, which is to say that with everything that's going on and everything being so ugly and everybody being adversely affected, if you are a red hat, that doesn't matter. If you're a farmer, you're still kind of jacked up, right? If you're a federal worker, blue or red, you're jacked up now. If you're trying to go someplace on a plane and there are not enough air traffic controllers who are also not being paid, blue or red hat, you're jacked up if you're a traveler, right? So the theory about this purple revolution is that, purple, think about the color wheel. We know that purple is made with red and blue, right? So that the theory is people are coming together because people now understand what what a detriment the felon is to our continued democracy. And I would just, um, I would urge caution. I think that there are people who are going to need to feel a lot more pain than they have felt to date before we can say, oh, that enemy of my enemy is my friend. Right now, they're just sort of vaguely inconvenienced. But as things escalate, there could very well be a purple revolution. It's just not yet. Not yet. And on our side, we can have a tendency to get all optimistic and starry-eyed about people having their come to Jesus moment. And these people are hardcore uh, in MAGA. And it's going to take a real bucket of ice cold water to wake them up, such that we can consider them members of any purple revolution. So hold your horses on that. But that does make me want to do pull some cards. This is the last thing I'll look at for today, so it'll be a short video. On the next No Kings protest. This is meant to be October 18th. Oh, by the way, speaking of 8th and October, I could have sworn that there was supposed to be some kind of press conference again of the Epstein survivors. I can't find any evidence for that anywhere online. So I'm guessing it didn't happen, or I don't know if people got cold feet. I know that some of the survivors have talked about, issuing their own Epstein list, but then others of them are expressing reservations because they're scared. Courage is doing what you need to do in the face of fear. I'm just saying. But anyway, it looks like there was not a conference or a meeting or anything like that today. If I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will point me in the right direction to find information about that, but I don't think it happened. But anyway, uh, so that's the 8th, didn't happen, but October 18th, which will be on not this weekend, but the following weekend, a Saturday, is the next No Kings protest. And we know that the felon is toying with the idea of instituting the Insurrection Act, posse comitatus, and feeling like he can put troops in the street, and that wouldn't that be a great time for him to do that on a wider scale than just a city here and a city there. So I just want to take a bird's eye overview of how the 18th will go. So that will be a mass gathering in every state of the Union of people. And so I'm going to use the garden because the garden would be that. It's just people out in the streets. In this case, protesting the idea that a felon can be our king. So how will that go? So we're looking for the garden that will stand for the protest all over the country. And of course, I will take another look at this closer to the time, but I'm just curious about what the energy might be saying today. Okay, so this is No King's Day on the 18th. Well, oh, you know what? Let me draw a postscript. That's that three card um, message. Okay. All right. So we have the young woman, we have the cross, we have the No Kings protest, we have the ring, and we have the dog. Now, this is a very yin card. Yin is passive, and I can mirror it with the dog. And but one of the meanings of dog, as a Black person, I'm struck by the irony of this. It's such a benign, good card, the dog. One of the meanings is police. And I can mirror these two together, which I find really interesting because it's making me think that, and we're talking sort of nationwide, that the police will go out of their way to avoid being aggressive or ugly with the people. And that the people, for the most part, will be, um, will be demonstrating, nonviolent resistance. Um, so this is really nice. Uh, the message that will come from the protest is that there is a lot of pain felt by the country. This is the card for pain, and that it seems to be unremitting. Just it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. That's the message. Okay. So we go back to this. I think this is also the people being peaceful. We have crossroads, ship, and star. I think the people will make very clear in peaceful ways that we want to go a different way from the way that we are headed. We want to go a different way from the way we are headed when we think about our future. No kings. We're not trying to have kings. Mm-mm. Especially not the felon. Second card in the original line is the cross. This is a card for pain. People are experiencing real hardship in just so many different ways. It's not just one. And I'm not sure that the shutdown will be over by the 18th. I think it's going to take about a total of 3 weeks. So the 18th will be towards the end of that. Oops, dropped a card. The end of that time. Clarifiers are the tower, the sun, and the book. So this is the people's pain, which will make abundantly clear that from our point of view, the government, and by the government I mean all three branches, it's very clear that they are really at sixes and sevens. They don't know what they're doing. In the center, we have our card for the actual No King's Day protests. Clarifiers, scythe, bouquet, and heart. Really interesting cards, I think. So this is the day. Now the scythe. This is a cutting instrument, but you know what I always say? It's actually an ingenious farming tool because not only does it have a blade that cuts, it has a curve that gathers. And so as a reader, I have to ascertain, are we talking about cutting or are we talking about gathering? I think we are talking about gathering. I think that this should be the biggest demonstration yet, the most widespread. Um, I think that people will, in fact, start to find common ground because people will be out there for different reasons, but all of the reasons have to do with the fact that the American public is feeling pain. That's the common denominator. And I think that this gift could I mean, this protest could very well end up garnering, bringing in, gathering, scooping up for us a gift. And what would be the gift? Well, we love the idea of a more perfect union. We love the idea of a democracy. And we do not want to trade in a democracy for an autocracy. No kings, get it? So I think this is really good. This is very hopeful. Not what I thought I would see, so I'm glad about that. Fourth card is the ring. And remember that before, when I was going horizontally, I was mirroring that with the cross, that the people's pain is unremitting. Just so the clarifiers for this are the scales, the anchor, and the moon. That because of this unremitting pain, we want to be committed to not this pain, but in fact committed to justice. This is my card for justice. And we want to, sort of anchor ourselves in a clearer understanding of who we want to be as a people. And I've said this many, many times, both in my writing and in my comments here, that the jury has been out to date on what we want to be and who we want to be. There's some people who would love to go back to the antebellum South, but I think most of us, that's not the case. And by the way, as an aside, before I get to the rest of the cards, I don't know if you're on Substack, that this guy Curtis Yarvin writes on there, and I didn't want to go read his piece, but I read a summary of his piece that somebody else on Substack wrote. Curtis Yarvin is one of the main architects of Project 2025. He is a cold-blooded, um, well, he's an awful person, racist and xenophobic and all kinds of things. And he believes that democracy should die and that essentially the country should be run by technocrats, right? Like so tech, billionaires, who understand technology and will just be like the drones of the technocrats. That's his big plan. And he had a moment a few months ago where, because it looked like his plan was really starting to take effect. Well, he wrote this piece in Substack where he basically said, I mean, I'm going to just, you can find it on Substack, but this is the absolute Cliff Notes version of it. He basically said that um, MAGA is too dumb to get it. Like they are just dazzled by spectacle and they don't understand how important this work is. This destruction of the government and this building of this technocracy. And they're so dumb that as he sort of looks ahead to what's coming, he said, anybody who is of my persuasion, meaning my thoughts on how things should go, by 2029, will probably have left the country because things are not going our way. I'll tell you what, I read that and I slept very well last night. Because despite appearances, I am telling you, this center cannot hold. Things are falling apart for them. Not fast enough, not as fast as we'd like it. We are not at the point of the Purple Revolution yet, but it's coming. And when people like Curtis Yarvin acknowledge that, we know we're winning. So again, why did I bring that up? Because we want to really make this decision be anchored in our collective decision about who we want to be as a country. We know MAGA's falling apart, that whole CK thing. they're falling apart with all kinds of infighting. Um, good. So, maybe we can come to some meeting of the minds about who we want to be. We're far from that, far from that. But, you know, what we are committed to deciding what constitutes justice for us. Who do we want to be as a people? How do we want to be known by our grandchildren and by the world? Um, yeah. So, the final card in the original line was the dog. And you remember that when I first looked at it horizontally, it seemed to me that the people are going to be peaceful by and large, and that the police, who themselves are suffering, it's not like they're making more money than anybody else. Groceries are expensive, right? Rents are expensive. Mortgages are hard to come by. All of that affects the police as well. Um, and the clarifiers are the lily, the tree, and the letter. So I think what will happen, because this is not just the police now that I'm going vertically, I feel like this is our political representatives. They have to decide why they are there. Why are they in Congress? Why are they in the Senate? They were supposed to be there to help the people, to do the work of the people. Instead, they are allowing themselves to be hamstrung by a felon who would be a king. So I think that this day, the 18th, will show everyone, make everyone sort of have to pause and decide long term how we can be mature, on the eve of our 250th birthday, how we can rethink our Constitution, to really mean we the people. So that looks great. Now, I pulled clarifiers, I mean, like a postscript, a three-card postscript. And the cards are interesting. So we have the clouds, we have the bear, and we have the clover. I think that the way the day goes will confuse the felon. He'll be like, "What? Like, where's my base? Where's my supporters?" And he will realize that his time as our narcissist in chief is now short-lived. Clover is short, quick, short-lived. So that's good. Um, so I think the day will go well. They're saying you should, if you're going to be outside, as they say, you should wear black clothing that covers up as much skin as possible in case there's some sort of agents out there, meaning chemical agents out there that could burn. Um, and you can go online and find all kinds of tips and tricks and um, advice for how to conduct yourself if you're going to be outside. I will not be outside for all the reasons that you already know, but my revolutionary work is right here at this desk. Um, I heard that the felon has said that by the end of the week, or at the end of the week, he thinks he's going to the Middle East because this peace plan that he wants his Nobel Prize for. I don't know. Speaking of peace prizes and um, Nobel, whatever. Um, if you have Netflix, you should see that Last Words documentary, where Jane Goodall is interviewed about sort of what her last words would be. And it was filmed, and um, not nobody has seen it until after her death. And it's just so moving and so inspiring. And if you need to be uplifted, I mean, I know she died and that's very sad, but if you'd like to celebrate her life, I really can't think of a better way than to advise you to watch that documentary and then take some of her advice because I cried. I did. I cried. It was just amazing. She was amazing. She was a gift, and it was an honor to be on this earth at the same time that she was. Um, but anyway, from the sublime to the ridiculous. So the felon says that he is going to the Middle East at the end of the week. That's quite a strenuous trip. And apparently, when he travels overseas, he does not sleep on the plane, according to Caitlin Collins, the reporter. So that means the reporters don't sleep. But I don't care about that. My concern is, well, not my concern. My 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 understanding is that he doesn't sleep, and he's a man of a certain age with certain health conditions. I don't know. Let's just see. How will he do on that trip? How will he fare? His health. That's all I'm looking at. How will his health fare on this trip? Because, it is October, and you know what all of us readers have said for a while now about October. Again, we just read cards. We could be wrong, we could be right, but let's see how his trip to the Middle East will um, affect or not his health. So I'm going to use the older man card with an eye towards this trip to the Middle East. Okay, here he is. So we have the star, we have the fish, we have the felon, we have the older woman, and we have the bear. Okay. Now, I will say these first two cards speak to the fact that he is also, being of a certain age, is concerned about his legacy, how he will be seen in the future. That's why he wants the Peace Prize, so that he can pull it out of his pocket and show it to God or St. Peter as like the ticket, into the through the pearly gates. This is him thinking about posterity, thinking about heaven versus hell. He has I don't think he thinks about religion. I know he doesn't really have a religion, but to whatever extent he does, at the very least, he's surrounded by people who have this very sort of up-down view of, heaven and hell and, you know, um, what angels and devils and clouds that you can lie on and flames that you can burn on. That he probably has that very rudimentary understanding of what happens. So he's thinking about that, and he is emotional. This is like because he doesn't feel well. They're telling him he doesn't have long, so he's feeling some type of way about this. He's in the middle. The fourth card is Melania. I suspect she is going to go with him. I suspect, of course, that she will be paid to go with him and will probably try to, get a hookup in terms of deals or whatever while she's over there because, the Saudis know and the Israelis know as well that the way to their hearts, the the felon and his female, is through money. So she's thinking long term and what kind of, sweet deal she could maybe get financially. But this card, this is about him feeling emotional about his legacy and wanting to be, seen as the king of America who brought peace to the Middle East. Uh, and of course that last card is the bear. This is him and his narcissistic self. It's not that he cares about the Gazans or even the Israeli hostages or anything like that. It's all about wanting to impress St. Peter and then being let through the pearly gates. So I just drew cards on the bear and on him. He is the bear, but he's here in the spread twice. So here he is in the center. The cards I pulled for him are the tower, the mice, and the mountain. If he is going to go away this weekend on this trip, you can see why these cards would be what they are. So this is him. This is the government. And he's really scared about the fact that things aren't working. In fact, he gave an interview at one point and he said something like, well, yeah, I think we can do a deal with the Democrats about, something to do with health care and we'll be able to. And then he walked it back because he heard from the Republicans, what are you doing? We're not doing that. Stop. So he's terrified, and he's blocked from doing the things that he wants to do. So he goes on this trip under a really huge amount of self-imposed stress. And I love that for him, as they say. Now, here he is again, Mr. Narcissist. Clarifiers, the scythe, the clouds, and the clover. Uh, you know, that kind of trip is long and it can really take a toll. And I think it will take a toll on him. And I think there could be a sudden event. Again, I've always said either cerebral or cardiac on this trip. I'm just a card reader. I could be right, I could be wrong. But I think that the chances of him suffering something like that are high. If he doesn't want to wear, for example, those elasticized leg sock, those elastic socks they tell people to wear for circulation. Um, if he spends all his time um, walking around the plane, well, walking around the plane is good, but sitting instead of walking around or lying down, which will get the blood moving, which would be good. He could have a cerebral event, or throw a clot, whatever. So I'm not saying that I wish this on him because I don't wish ill health on anyone. Um, but I think that the chances increase on this trip abroad. So I will leave us there. If you want to see what I'm doing tomorrow, come over to Substack. As I mentioned last time, in order to read more than just a little paragraph of what I've written now, um, yeah, you have to subscribe. The rate is $5 a month or $50 a year. Uh, and that's where I use Lenormand and I use tarot and I use the Adinkra as well, which is an African oracle to look at what's going on. So I'm going to be doing that tomorrow, writing my next article, but you will see me back here again on Friday. So have a good couple of days, and I will see you on Friday. Take care.